The morning sun peeked through the blinds of the penthouse office as he stared out at the city skyline. Raj Kumar had built his tech company from nothing, transforming it into one of the country's fastest-growing startups. At 34, he had achieved more than most people do in a lifetime, yet something was missing. He adjusted his expensive suit and glanced at the financial reports on his desk. The numbers weren't looking good. Despite their innovative products, they needed a significant cash injection to stay competitive. Venture capitalists were circling like sharks, offering money but demanding control. Raj wouldn't let go of his company that easily. "Sir, the Mehta family is here for your meeting," his assistant announced through the intercom. Raj took a deep breath. The Mehtas were old money, a wealthy industrial family looking to diversify their investments into tech. Their daughter, Priya, had recently taken over their investment division. She was known to be brilliant, having graduated from a prestigious university abroad and worked at top financial firms before joining the family business. The meeting went better than expected. Priya asked insightful questions about technology that impressed even Raj, who rarely found himself impressed by anyone. The Mehtas seemed interested in investing, but they wanted assurances, family connections, something stronger than a mere business agreement. "Perhaps we could discuss this further over dinner," suggested Priya's father, giving his daughter a meaningful look. Later that evening at his apartment, Raj's childhood friend Vikram didn't mince words. "They're looking for a son-in-law, not just a business partner," Vikram said, lounging on Raj's leather couch. "Everyone knows the Mehtas want to marry their daughter off to someone successful." "I'm aware," Raj replied, swirling his drink. He had grown up in a small town, his family struggling to pay for his education. Now that he had risen to the top, he understood how the elite operated. Marriage was often just another business transaction. "So? What's the problem?" "Priya is smart, beautiful, and comes with the investment you need. It's a win-win." Raj had always seen marriage as something that could wait. He was married to his work, after all. But this was different, a strategic alliance that could save his company while elevating his social standing. "I'll think about it," he said. Over the next few weeks, Raj found himself going to dinners, charity galas, and family events with the Mehtas. Each time, he was seated next to Priya. She was reserved at first, professional and focused on business discussions. But gradually, he noticed other things about her, how her eyes lit up when talking about her travels, her quiet confidence, the way she treated service staff with genuine kindness. Still, Raj reminded himself that this was a business arrangement. When he finally decided to propose, he approached it like a merger. They met at an upscale restaurant, and after some small talk about market trends, he laid out his proposition. "What I'm suggesting is a partnership," he said, careful with his words. "We both know what our families want. You need a husband who understands business, and I need the capital and connections your family provides. We're compatible, we get along well enough, and we could make this work." Priya studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said something that caught him off guard. "Is that all you think marriage is? A business transaction?" Raj was surprised by her directness. "In our world, isn't that what it often comes down to?" "I'm just being honest about it." "At least you're honest," she said with a small smile. "But I have conditions. This can't just be about money and connections. We need to know each other better before making any decisions." Her proposal was simple: 3 months of actually dating before announcing any engagement. They would spend time together away from family pressure and business discussions. 3 months to see if they could at least become friends, if not more. Raj agreed, though he considered it merely a formality. He was certain that by the end of 3 months, they would proceed with the arrangement as planned. What he didn't expect was how much he would enjoy those dates. Away from the boardroom, Priya was different, funny, adventurous, and surprisingly down-to-earth despite her privileged upbringing. She took him to street food stalls she had loved since childhood, challenging him to try spicy dishes that made his eyes water. She debated with him about books, proved to be a formidable opponent in chess, and shared stories about her time working abroad. One evening, about a month into their arrangement, they were walking through a night market when it started to rain, not a gentle drizzle, but a sudden downpour. They ran for cover, but not before getting completely soaked. "Look at us," Priya laughed, wringing water from her hair. "So much for your perfect CEO image." For the first time in years, Raj laughed genuinely, not the practiced chuckle he used in business meetings. Standing there, drenched and far from the luxury they were both accustomed to, something changed. He looked at Priya and saw not the meta-fortune or the solution to his company's problems, but simply a woman whose smile made him forget about spreadsheets and investor meetings. That night as he drove her home, the comfortable silence between them felt different. When they reached her family's mansion, she turned to him. "You know, when my father first suggested meeting you, I was against it. I thought you were just another ambitious businessman who saw me as a walking checkbook. Wasn't I?" Raj asked honestly. "Maybe at first," she admitted. "But I think there's more to you than that, just like there's more to me than my family name." As he watched her walk into her house, Raj felt uneasy. This wasn't going according to plan. He was supposed to be securing a business alliance through marriage, not developing genuine feelings. Feelings complicated things, created vulnerabilities. He had built his business empire by being calculating and strategic, never letting emotions cloud his judgment. Yet as he drove back to his empty penthouse apartment, he couldn't stop thinking about her laugh in the rain. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps there could be more to this arrangement than he had initially planned. The thought both excited and terrified him. His phone buzzed with a message from his CFO about urgent financial matters needing his attention. Reality crashed back. His company was still in trouble, and the meta investment was still necessary for survival. He couldn't afford to forget why he had started this in the first place. Tomorrow, he decided, he would refocus on the business aspects of their arrangement. This was about saving his company, not about falling in rain puddles and laughing like teenagers. He was a CEO first, and everything else second. But as he fell asleep that night, it wasn't financial reports or business strategies that filled his mind, but the image of Priya, soaking wet and laughing, looking at him as if she could see past the carefully constructed facade he showed the world. The board meeting dragged on longer than expected. Raj shifted in his seat as his executives presented the latest projections. Without fresh investment, they would need to cut staff within 3 months. He thought of all the talented people who had trusted him with their careers and felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. "We need that meta deal," his CFO whispered as the meeting ended. "How are things progressing with the daughter?" Raj nodded curtly, uncomfortable with how his personal life and business had become so entangled. His phone lit up with a message from Priya, asking if they were still on for dinner. He smiled despite himself. When he arrived at the restaurant, Priya was already there, but she wasn't alone. A young boy of about 8 sat beside her, concentrating intensely on a drawing. "Raj, this is my nephew, Aryan," she explained. "My sister had an emergency, so I'm on babysitting duty tonight. I hope you don't mind." The old Raj would have been annoyed at this deviation from plans. Instead, he found himself pulling up a chair next to the boy. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "A robot that can clean the oceans," Aryan replied without looking up. "Auntie Priya says the oceans are getting filled with plastic, and someone needs to fix it." "He wants to be an engineer," Priya explained with obvious pride. "Just like his auntie." "You're an engineer?" Raj asked, surprised. "I thought you studied finance." "Double major," she shrugged. "Finance was for my father, engineering was for me." Throughout dinner, Raj watched as Priya patiently answered Aryan's endless questions, explaining complex concepts in terms the child could understand. He saw a different side of her, nurturing, patient, passionate about things beyond balance sheets and profit margins. "You're good with him," Raj said later as they walked Aryan to the car. The boy had fallen asleep, his head resting on Priya's shoulder. "Kids are honest," she replied. "They haven't learned to hide behind corporate masks yet." The comment stung because Raj knew it contained a grain of truth about himself. He had spent years perfecting his CEO persona, sometimes forgetting where the mask ended and he began. The next day, Raj was surprised when his assistant informed him that Priya was waiting in the lobby. She had never come to his office unannounced before. "I have a proposal," she said as soon as he greeted her. "But not the kind you're thinking of." She opened her laptop and showed him blueprints for an educational tech platform designed to teach children in rural areas. "This is what I've been working on in my spare time. Your company has the technology to make it scalable. What if, instead of just taking my family's money, we created something meaningful together?" Raj studied the plans, impressed by their thoroughness. "This isn't just charity work. This could actually be profitable while doing good." "Exactly," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "I didn't want to mention it before because I thought you might see it as impractical." "The old me would have," he admitted. For the first time, he shared with her the story of his own childhood in a small village, how a teacher had recognized his potential and helped him get a scholarship. Not everyone gets that lucky break. They spent the entire afternoon working on her idea, their heads close together as they refined the concept. When his CFO poked his head in to remind Raj about another meeting, he waved him off. The financial pressures of his company seemed distant as he lost himself in the possibility of building something with purpose. That evening, as they sat on the floor of his office surrounded by takeout containers and project notes, Priya suddenly looked up at him. "You know, when my father first suggested I meet you, he showed me articles about your business successes. But they don't capture who you really are." "And who am I really?" Raj asked, curious about how she saw him. "Someone who cares more than he lets on," she said simply. "Someone afraid to show it because he thinks it makes him vulnerable." The truth of her words made him uncomfortable. He had always believed that success required keeping emotions separate from business decisions. Yet here was Priya, brilliant and successful, unafraid to show her passion for causes she believed in. As they parted that night, he impulsively asked, "Would you like to meet my mother?" The question surprised them both. His mother still lived in their hometown, and he visited her monthly. He had never taken anyone with him before, considering that part of his life separate from his identity as a CEO. "I'd like that very much," Priya replied softly. Driving home, Raj realized that the lines he had carefully drawn between his personal and professional lives were blurring. The investment from the Metas was still crucial for his company's survival, but increasingly, that wasn't why he looked forward to seeing Priya. He was falling for her, not for her family's wealth or connections, but for her mind, her kindness, and the way she saw through his carefully constructed facade to the person he used to be, the person he sometimes wished he still was. The small house looked exactly as Raj remembered it, modest but meticulously maintained. As he parked his luxury car on the narrow street, he felt the familiar contrast between his two worlds. Beside him, Priya straightened her simple salwar kameez, having changed from her usual business attire for this visit. "Are you nervous?" he asked, surprised to find that he was. "A little," she admitted. "I've never been great at first impressions with parents." "Just be yourself," he said, then added with a smile, "My mother has always seen through pretenses anyway." Sunita Kumar was in her 60s but moved with the energy of a much younger woman. She embraced her son first, then turned to Priya with curious eyes. "So you're the girl my son has been talking about," she said directly, studying Priya's face. "Ma," Raj protested, but Priya just smiled. It's nice to meet you, Auntie. Raj speaks very highly of you. Throughout lunch, Raj watched anxiously as his mother asked Priya questions about her family, her education, her work. He had never brought anyone home before, and certainly never someone from such a different social background. His worries proved unnecessary. After the meal, as Raj helped with the dishes, his mother pulled him aside. "She's not what I expected," she whispered. "When you mentioned the Mehta family, I thought she'd be spoiled, looking down on everything here." "She's different," Raj agreed. "She looks at you the right way," his mother said cryptically. "Not like you're her ticket to something else." Later, Sunita invited Priya to see her small garden behind the house. Raj watched through the window as the two women bent over plants, his mother apparently explaining something about her homegrown herbs. He was struck by how naturally Priya fit into this part of his life he had kept separate for so long. On the drive back to the city, Priya was quiet. "Did my mother say something to upset you?" he finally asked. "Just the opposite," Priya replied. "She told me the story of how she raised you alone after your father died. How she worked 2 jobs to pay for your schooling." She paused. "She's very proud of you, but not for the reasons you might think." "What do you mean?" "She showed me a community center you helped build in your hometown. She said you still fund scholarships for children there but never put your name on anything." Priya turned to look at him. "Why didn't you ever tell me about that work?" Raj kept his eyes on the road. "It's not relevant to the business. It's relevant to who you are," she said softly. The following week brought unwelcome news. A major competitor had launched a similar product to Raj's company's main offering, but at a lower price point. Their stock dropped, and the pressure for the Mehta investment increased. In his office, Vikram didn't hide his frustration. "You need to close this deal with the Mehtas now," he insisted. "What are you waiting for? You've been seeing their daughter for months. Make it official." "It's not that simple anymore," Raj replied. "Of course it is. You need their money, they want the connection to your success story. It's a perfect match." "But what if," Raj hesitated. "What if I actually have feelings for her?" Vikram stared at him, then burst out laughing. "Since when do feelings matter in these arrangements? If you happen to like her, that's a bonus, not a requirement." That evening, Raj received a call from Priya's father, inviting him to their family home for dinner. The unspoken implication was clear: they were expecting a discussion about marriage. The timing couldn't have been worse, with his company's financial situation deteriorating daily. When he arrived, the Mehta mansion was lit up impressively. Servants guided him to a lavishly decorated dining room where Priya's parents and several family members waited. Priya herself seemed tense, dressed formally in an expensive silk sari. "Raj," Mr. Mehta boomed. "We've been seeing a lot of news about your company lately. Troubling times in the market, yes?" "Just temporary setbacks," Raj replied smoothly, though his stomach tightened. Throughout dinner, he felt the weight of expectation from Priya's family. They discussed business, politics, mutual connections, all while glancing meaningfully between him and Priya. She remained unusually quiet. After dinner, Mr. Mehta invited Raj to his study. The older man didn't waste time on pleasantries. "My daughter tells me you two have become close," he said, pouring 2 glasses of expensive scotch. "I think it's time we discuss the future, don't you?" "With all due respect, sir, I think that's a conversation I should have with Priya first." Mr. Mehta looked surprised, then amused. Of course. But you should know, my offer to invest in your company stands regardless. We're businessmen, after all." The implication hit Raj like a bucket of cold water. The investment wasn't contingent on marriage. It had always been separate. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying business is business, and family is family," Mr. Mehta clarified. We think your company has potential, marriage or not. Though naturally, we'd be pleased if things progressed in that direction as well. When Raj found Priya later, she was sitting alone in the garden. Your father just offered to invest in my company, he said, sitting beside her. No strings attached. I know, she replied. I suggested it. I wanted you to know that whatever happens between us, it doesn't have to be tied to business. Raj stared at her, a strange feeling washing over him. For months, he had approached their relationship as a means to an end, a necessary step to secure his company's future. Now that the pressure was gone, he was left to face the truth he had been avoiding. The funny thing is, he said slowly, I'm not sure I care about the investment anymore. The news about Meta Industries' investment in Raj's company made headlines in the business section. The stock price stabilized, and the immediate danger passed. But for Raj, everything had changed. His relationship with Priya existed in a strange new territory, no longer a business arrangement, but not yet defined by either of them. You've been distracted lately, observed his COO during a strategy meeting. Is everything all right? Just thinking about new directions, Raj replied vaguely. The truth was, he couldn't stop thinking about Priya. Their dinner dates continued, but there was an unspoken tension between them. Neither seemed willing to address what would happen next. One evening, as they walked along the riverfront after dinner, Priya finally broke the silence. My parents keep asking about our plans, she said, watching the lights reflect on the water. They think 3 months was enough time. And what do you think? Raj asked carefully. I think we started this for all the wrong reasons. She turned to face him. But somewhere along the way, I started wishing it was real. Her honesty caught him off guard. In the business world, Raj was known for his quick thinking and decisive action. But standing there, facing Priya's vulnerable expression, he found himself speechless. I need to know if this is still just a convenient arrangement for you, she continued when he didn't respond. Because if it is, we should end it now before. Before what? He prompted when she didn't finish. Before I fall any deeper, she said softly. Raj knew this was the moment to be honest, to tell her how his feelings had evolved. Instead, panic rose in his chest. The company might be stable now, but what if things changed again? What if he allowed himself to be vulnerable, only to lose everything he'd worked for? I don't know what you want me to say, he finally replied. The hurt that flashed across her face was unmistakable. I want you to say what you really feel, not what you think is strategic. It's not that simple. It is that simple, she interrupted. Either you have feelings for me beyond this arrangement, or you don't. When he hesitated again, she nodded slowly. I understand. Thank you for being honest, at least. She stepped back. I think I should go home alone tonight. Raj watched her walk away, knowing he should run after her, but his feet remained rooted to the spot. Years of conditioning to see relationships as transactions, to protect himself from vulnerability, held him in place. The next morning, he threw himself into work with renewed intensity. If his executives noticed his darker mood, they didn't comment on it. Days passed with no word from Priya. Raj told himself it was for the best. The investment was secure, their arrangement had served its purpose. But as he sat in his penthouse one evening, staring at the city lights, he felt hollow. His phone buzzed with a message from Vikram, containing a photo from a society event. In it, Priya stood smiling next to a handsome man Raj recognized as the son of another prominent business family. Looks like the Metas are exploring other options, Vikram's message read. Should we be worried about the investment? Raj felt a surge of something unfamiliar, a burning sensation in his chest that he eventually recognized as jealousy. The feeling surprised him. He had no right to feel possessive of Priya, he had been the one unable to admit his feelings. He dialed his CFO. Is the Meta investment secure? Legally binding? Yes, sir. The papers are signed. Why? Is there a problem? No problem, Raj replied, ending the call. He sat for a long time, replaying moments with Priya in his mind, her laughter in the rain, her patience with her nephew, the way she'd fit so naturally into his mother's small garden. He remembered how she had never once looked impressed by his wealth or status, how she had seen through to the person he had been before success changed him. The next morning, Raj did something unprecedented. He cleared his schedule for the day. His assistant looked at him as if he'd announced he was moving to the moon. "Everything okay, sir?" she asked hesitantly. "For the first time in a long time, I think it might be," he replied. He drove to the building that housed the Meta offices. The receptionist recognized him immediately. "Is Priya in?" he asked. "I'm sorry, sir. Miss Mehta is not in the office today." Raj felt his confidence waver. "Do you know where I might find her?" The receptionist hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "She's volunteering today, sir. At the community center in Vikas Nagar." Vikas Nagar was one of the poorer neighborhoods in the city. As Raj navigated the narrow streets, his luxury car drawing curious stares, he wondered what Priya was doing there. He found the community center easily enough, a simple building with children's drawings decorating the windows. Inside, the sound of children's voices led him to a classroom where Priya sat surrounded by young girls, teaching them how to use tablets. She looked up when he entered, surprise clear on her face. The children turned to stare at the visitor in his expensive suit. "Class, please continue with the exercise," Priya said calmly. "I'll be right back." She led Raj to a small courtyard outside. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," he said simply. "I made a mistake." A slight breeze ruffled her hair as she looked at him skeptically. Which mistake would that be? Raj had rehearsed what he would say, but standing before her, all his practiced words disappeared. Instead, he spoke from a place he had kept guarded for years. "I've been afraid," he admitted. "Not of failure or losing my company, but of this, of feeling something real that I can't control or predict." Priya crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "So you're afraid of real feelings? That's what you came here to tell me?" "No," Raj said, taking a deep breath. "I came to tell you that I'm tired of being afraid. That meeting you has changed me in ways I never expected." A group of children ran past them, laughing and chasing each other. Priya watched them with a gentle smile before turning back to Raj. "What is this place?" he asked, looking around at the modest community center. "It's where I spend my Thursdays," she explained. "Teaching tech skills to girls from low-income families." She hesitated. "My grandfather started it years ago. Before the family business grew so large." "You never mentioned it. You never asked about anything outside of business or our arrangement," she pointed out. "Until you started to see me, really see me." Raj nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. "I'd like to hear about it now." They walked around the center as Priya explained how she'd expanded the program, bringing in tablets and developing a curriculum that combined coding basics with practical skills. As she spoke, her passion was evident, reminding him of how she had looked when sharing her educational tech platform idea. "The girls you saw today, most of them have never had anyone believe they could work in technology," she said. "But they're brilliant. They just need opportunity and someone to tell them they belong in that world. Like my teacher did for me," Raj said softly. "Exactly." She stopped walking and faced him. "That's what drew me to you, you know. Not your success or status. When you told me about your childhood, how you made it against the odds, I saw the person behind the CEO mask." A child called Priya's name from across the courtyard, holding up a tablet with a question. "I should get back," she said. "Can I stay?" Raj asked, surprising himself. I could help. Priya looked skeptical. In your designer suit? For the first time in years, Raj found himself laughing at his own expense. He removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Better? The afternoon passed in a blur as Raj moved from student to student, helping with basic coding exercises. He was rusty. It had been years since he'd done basic programming himself, but the girls' enthusiasm was infectious. One particularly bright student peppered him with questions about how computers worked, reminding him of his own curiosity as a child. As the session ended and the students filed out, Priya approached him. "You're good with them," she said, echoing his words from when he had watched her with her nephew. "They remind me of myself at that age," he admitted. Hungry to learn, to change their circumstances. They cleaned up in comfortable silence, arranging tablets and straightening chairs. It felt strangely domestic, so different from their usual dinners at exclusive restaurants or business meetings. "My driver can take the equipment back to the office," Priya said as they finished. "Would you like to go for a walk? There's a small park nearby." The park was simple but peaceful, with old trees providing shade from the late afternoon sun. They found a bench and sat side by side, watching elderly men play chess at concrete tables. "I saw you in the paper," Raj finally said. "With Arjun Kapoor." Priya looked surprised, then amused. "My father's attempt at introducing other options." Arjun spent the entire evening talking about his car collection. "And that doesn't interest you?" "I grew up surrounded by men obsessed with their possessions," she said simply. "I've always been more interested in what people build, not what they buy." Raj nodded, understanding more clearly why she had been drawn to his story, his work. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since that night by the river," he said carefully. "About what I want, what really matters." "And what did you conclude?" she asked, her voice neutral but her eyes attentive. "That I've spent so many years focused on building my company, I forgot to build a life." He turned to face her fully. "That when I'm with you, I remember who I was before spreadsheets and stock prices became my whole world. That he paused, the words still difficult to say aloud, that I've fallen in love with you. Not with your family connections or your name, but with you." The vulnerability of the admission left him feeling exposed, his heart pounding. Priya studied his face for a long moment, as if searching for any trace of calculation or strategy. "Those are beautiful words," she finally said. "But Raj, love isn't just something you feel, it's something you do. How do I know this isn't just another business pivot when your original strategy didn't work?" Her question was fair, and for once, Raj didn't have a ready answer. In business, he could always point to data, to concrete projections and plans. But this was different territory. "I don't have a PowerPoint presentation to convince you," he said honestly. "Just a request, give me the chance to show you. Not with words, but with actions." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "What kind of actions?" "I was thinking we could start with the educational platform you designed," he said. "My team has the technical expertise, you have the vision. We could build it together, not as a business arrangement, but as partners." "Partners," she repeated, considering the word. "That's what you called it the first time you proposed our arrangement." "This time I mean something different," he said softly. "Something real." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Priya made her decision. "Actions, not words," Priya said finally. "I'll hold you to that, Raj Kumar." Over the following weeks, they fell into a new rhythm. Mornings were devoted to their respective companies, afternoons to developing the educational platform together. They converted a small conference room at Raj's office into their project space, its walls soon covered with flowcharts, user journey maps, and children's drawings from test sessions. For the first time in his career, Raj found himself working not for profit or status, but for purpose. He watched Priya light up when explaining features to his development team, her knowledge of both technology and education impressive. His employees noticed the change in him too, how he left the office at reasonable hours, how he smiled more easily. "You seem different," his COO commented after a particularly productive meeting. "Good different or bad different?" Raj asked. "Good. More like the guy who started this company with nothing but a laptop and big ideas." Priya insisted they test the platform with real students before launching. Every Thursday, they visited her community center, making adjustments based on the girls' feedback. Raj found himself looking forward to these days the most, sitting cross-legged on the floor, his expensive suits replaced by casual clothes, watching children discover the joy of creation through technology. One evening, as they worked late at his office, Priya looked up from her laptop. "We need to talk about something," she said, her tone serious. Raj felt a flutter of anxiety. "What is it?" "The funding. If we want this platform to reach rural areas, we'll need more than what your R&D budget can provide." "I can put in my own money," he offered immediately. "That's not sustainable long-term," she countered. "We need to think bigger." What followed was a discussion unlike any they'd had before, not as potential spouses in an arranged match, not as business associates, but as true partners with a shared vision. They debated funding models, impact measurements, and scaling strategies with mutual respect and passion. "What if we approach both our families' foundations?" Priya suggested. "Not as the Metas and Kumars, but as equal partners in a joint initiative?" The idea was elegant in its simplicity. It would bring their families together through a shared purpose rather than a marriage contract. The presentation to both families was scheduled at a neutral location, a hotel conference room. As they set up, Raj noticed Priya seemed nervous. "Everything will be fine," he assured her. "The platform is solid." "It's not that," she admitted. "This is the first time our families will see us as, whatever we are now." "And what are we?" he asked gently. Before she could answer, their families arrived. The Metas entered first, followed by Raj's mother, whom he had arranged to bring to the city for the meeting. The contrast between the wealthy industrialists and his simple, sari-clad mother couldn't have been more stark. To his surprise, Mrs. Mehta immediately went to greet his mother, taking her hands warmly. "Sunita ji, we finally meet. Priya has told me so much about your garden." As the two women chatted like old friends, Mr. Mehta approached Raj. "So, this is what kept you two so busy. No time for dinner invitations anymore?" "We wanted to have something concrete to show you," Raj explained. The presentation exceeded their expectations. Both families asked thoughtful questions and offered valuable suggestions. When they explained the potential impact, millions of children across rural areas gaining access to quality education, Raj saw genuine excitement in everyone's eyes. "This is remarkable work," Mr. Mehta said afterward. "Different from our usual investments, but perhaps more important." "I'm proud of you both," Raj's mother added, her eyes shining. As the meeting concluded with commitments from both families to support the initiative, Raj noticed Priya slip out of the room. He found her on the hotel's terrace, looking out at the city lights. "Everything went perfectly," he said, joining her at the railing. "Why did you leave?" "I needed a moment," she replied. "Seeing our families together, supporting something we built." She turned to him. "Do you realize what we did in there? We changed the narrative. It wasn't about a business merger through marriage. It was about creating something meaningful together." In that moment, looking at her illuminated by the city lights, Raj understood what had been happening all along. Their journey had never really been about wealth or business advantages, those were just the circumstances that brought them together. The real story was how two people from different worlds found common ground, purpose, and eventually, love. "I've been thinking about what you asked earlier," Priya continued. "About what we are." She took his hand. We're partners, Raj. In every sense of the word. He interlaced his fingers with hers. Is that enough? For now, she said with a smile that held promise. Remember, actions, not words. Back inside, their families were waiting. Mr. Mehta raised an eyebrow at their joined hands but said nothing. Mrs. Mehta and Raj's mother exchanged knowing glances. We have a suggestion, Mrs. Mehta announced. Since this project will require ongoing collaboration, perhaps we should all meet regularly. Family dinners, alternating between our homes. And Sunita ji must teach me about her herb garden, she added, smiling at Raj's mother. I've never been able to keep a plant alive. As they all laughed together, Raj felt a sense of rightness wash over him. The boundaries between his worlds, business and personal, past and present, were dissolving. For the first time, he wasn't calculating advantages or protecting himself. He was simply living, fully present in a moment of genuine connection. Later, as he drove Priya home, she rested her head on his shoulder. This isn't how I imagined things would turn out when we first met, she admitted. Is that a complaint? He asked. Just the opposite. She looked up at him. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you don't plan for. 1 year later, the educational platform they had built together, now named Vidya Connect, had reached over 100 rural schools. What had started as a shared project had grown into a successful nonprofit initiative, supported by both their companies and foundations across the country. Raj stood at the edge of a schoolyard in a remote village, watching as children gathered around tablets, their faces lit with excitement. Beside him, Priya documented their progress, occasionally stopping to help a student or answer a teacher's question. Remember when we first tested this with just 10 students, she asked, joining him in the shade of a large tree. Now look at it. The success of Vidya Connect had changed them both. Raj found himself delegating more of his CEO responsibilities, making time for what truly mattered. Priya had stepped up to lead her family's charitable foundation, focusing its resources on educational initiatives. Their personal relationship had evolved naturally, without the pressure of family expectations or business considerations. They had taken time to truly know each other, their dreams, fears, quirks, and habits. What had begun as a calculated arrangement had transformed into something neither could have predicted, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine love. The district administrator wants to implement the program in 20 more schools next month, Priya said, checking her phone. We'll need to train more teachers. We should bring in some of the girls from your community center, Raj suggested. The ones who've been with the program from the beginning. They could be mentors. She smiled at him, that special smile he had come to treasure. That's a brilliant idea. As they walked back to the village center where a meeting with local officials awaited them, Raj received a call from Vikram. Have you seen the business headlines? His friend asked without preamble. Your stock hit an all-time high after the new product launch. The analysts are calling you the CEO who has it all, commercial success and social impact. That's good news, Raj replied simply. Good news? It's incredible. You've completely changed the game. First, you secure the Meta investment without having to go through with the marriage, then you transform your company's image with this education project. Masterful strategy. Raj glanced at Priya walking ahead of him, helping a young girl carry her books. It wasn't strategy, Vikram. Sometimes life takes you in unexpected directions. After ending the call, he caught up with Priya. Do you ever think about how we started? Our original arrangement? Sometimes, she admitted. It seems like another lifetime ago. That evening, after a successful meeting with local officials, they sat on the steps of their guest house, watching the stars emerge in the clear village sky, so much brighter than in the city. I have something for you, Raj said, reaching into his pocket. He handed her a small wooden box. Priya looked at it curiously. What's this? Open it. Inside was a simple silver key. A key? She asked, puzzled. To a new office space, he explained. For Vidya Connect. It's time it had its own headquarters, not just a conference room in my company. Her face lit up. You found a place? Better. I bought the building next to the community center. We can expand the center on one floor and have the Vidya Connect offices above. All the girls you've been mentoring can see what's possible, education leading to real opportunities. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the key. This is perfect, Raj. Emboldened by her reaction, he reached for her hand. There's something else. A question I've been wanting to ask you. Her eyes widened as she seemed to realize what was coming. Don't worry, he said with a small smile. It's not the question you're thinking of, not yet. We've done enough rushing into things. Then what? She asked, both relief and curiosity in her voice. Move in with me, he said simply. Not to my penthouse, that never felt like a home anyway. Let's find a new place together, somewhere that can be ours. Priya was silent for a long moment, looking at the key in her palm, then up at the stars. When we first met, she finally said, I was so determined not to be part of an arranged match. I thought I'd be giving up my independence, becoming an accessory to someone else's life. She turned to face him. But this, what we've built together, it's more than I ever hoped for. We've both become more ourselves, not less. Is that a yes? He asked. It's a yes, she confirmed with a smile. But on one condition. Name it. We find a place with a garden. My mother-in-law-to-be has promised to teach me about growing herbs, and I intend to learn. Raj laughed, joy bubbling up inside him. I think that can be arranged. As they sat together under the stars, Raj reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. He had once viewed marriage as a business transaction, a means to secure his company's future. He had approached Priya as an asset to be acquired, not a person to be loved. Now, as he looked at her, this brilliant, compassionate woman who had challenged him, supported him, and ultimately changed him, he understood what true wealth meant. It wasn't measured in stock prices or investments, but in purpose, connection, and love. Mr. Mehta had been right, in a way. Business was business, and family was family. But Raj had found something even more valuable, a partner who belonged in both worlds and had helped him bridge the gap between them. 6 months later, when he did finally propose, not in an exclusive restaurant or at a business function, but while they were planting tomatoes in the garden of their new home, it wasn't because of family pressure or financial necessity. It was simply because he couldn't imagine his life without her. And when Priya said yes, her hands covered in soil and her eyes full of love, Raj knew that the greatest deal he had ever made wasn't signed in a boardroom. It was sealed with a promise between two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. The CEO who had once married for wealth had indeed found riches beyond measure, just not the kind that could be counted in rupees.